Hi there, and Scott Poynton here, and with my colleague,
The philosopher.
the Professor Julien Troussier, and we're making a video together for the first time. We've done some podcasts together, but we thought we'd try video, and a bit of an interesting subject to talk about today. I've just posted a small blog about INTHE, INTHE. It's a new acronym that's emerging into the world. And it has a bit of an unhappy meaning. It stands for the inevitable near-term human extinction. Inevitable near-term human extinction, INTHE. And the title of my blog was In the Poo, What to Do. And it's come about because, well, one climate scientist in particular, Professor Jem Bendel, at the University of Cumbria in the UK, has started, well, he tried to publish a paper about having looked at all of the data that's emerging from climate science. His view is that it's actually inevitable that we, in the near term, 30 to 50 years, in the lifetime of all of the people living on the planet today, that the impact of climate change will be so severe and so dramatic that it's inevitable that we will have human extinction. It's a bit serious. What do you think about that, mate? It's a bit serious, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a bit serious, but it's true. It's real.
It's what not just Professor Bendel, but other people are saying as well. And what was interesting was that the people where he normally publishes his papers, they rejected his paper on the grounds that not on the grounds that his data was wrong or that he was presenting wrong arguments, but that indeed it was too scary and people would react in a bad way. They didn't want to create fear. So this was interesting. He then published it as an occasional paper from within the university, as opposed to in the normal peer-reviewed journal that he publishes in. But obviously it's generated a lot of discussion, which is good, and we've both read it. It does tragically seem quite compelling. But the big question is, okay, what to do now? Because it's not talking about in the next 100, 500 years, which is climate science has, in the last 10 or so years, been doing these modellings where they look at the impacts of climate change coming. It's always in the next century. But as impacts are coming now, they're saying, well, we hadn't predicted these. We've predicted the impacts, but not for another 50 to 100 years. So it's accelerating. A lot of the positive feedback loops are coming in, like the methane being released in the Arctic. So it's all a bit disturbing. And the question really comes is what to do about it. Because when you talk about it, people certainly say to me, oh, don't get all dark and depressing. You're depressing me. And so there's really this sense that we shouldn't even talk about it. So it's even brave of us to be making a video where we're actually putting this as a central subject. But my sense is that we've got to talk about it, because if we don't talk about it, it may be inevitable, but I think we can always hope for miracles. We've always got to be optimistic. If it is inevitable, not talking about it isn't going to help us cope with it. It's not going to happen tomorrow, but it is going to unfold reasonably quickly. But there's talk of collapsing economic system, collapsing food systems. These are things we've got to prepare for. Jem Bendel talks about deep adaptation to the unfolding climate tragedy, and we've got to have a chat about these things if we're going to actually grapple with them. But also have this sense that unless we talk about it, we in talking about it and in imagining possible new solutions, it just might be the path to a miracle that we pull the iron out of the fire at the last minute. Yeah. Not talking about it because we're going to scare people, doesn't seem to be a very sensible approach to me. What are your thoughts, mate?
No, it's true, and it's.
We've got Finn here, by the way.
Yeah, Finn is always.
Finn wants to be in the video. He's always in the video. See, say good day, Finn. There he is. Anyway, so
and it's I think it's partly because it's so big, it's so hard to get your head around. We can't even imagine, sort of things unraveling in this way. But unless we take it seriously and really, as you say, if you really think it and realize it's possible, it's actually on the path toward this.
It's inevitable if you listen to people like Jem Bendel.
Yeah, and I think we're talking generally saying, oh well, it's reports after reports that are fairly dramatic, but
it seems to be escalating in the press.
It's escalating, but we don't really imagine that this could be the end, possibly of of mankind on this planet and many other species. We don't think it. I say this personally. It's hard, and we're not encouraged to think it this way. And I think it's a little bit like we know we're walking at a good pace towards the cliff, but it's okay. There's no cliff. There's a cliff clearly, but we just don't want to see it.
We're blind to it.
We're blind to it.
And in fact, if anyone points it out to us, they're negative, they're depressing, and we can beat this, we can do this, we can turn away from the cliff.
Yeah.
And I think I saw a tweet yesterday of Jem Bendel's. He said that a lot of articles now appearing about the impending problems of climate change, this climate tragedy as he calls it. But no one's really grappling, and none of the articles. There was an article in the Washington Post where they talk about, it's going to be bad, but they never really go into the consequences. Like what does he mean? What do they mean by it's going to be bad? Yeah. And what do we do to adapt to it? There's no discussion about that yet. I think it'll come as we start getting close to that edge. And the sooner we start talking about these things, the sooner either we can cope with it when it comes, as best you can, which it's not going to be easy. But again, I think the only hope we have of averting it, if there is any hope, is only going to be through talking about it, getting despair and getting depressed about it, but finding our way through that. It's my sense.
And there's also, I think what's hard for us is what we're so attached to the way things are and worried about what could happen in this situation and going forward. I think everyone has a sense that things are unraveling. Being for nature, in culture and nature, we see signs of a major crisis, and it's not a surprise that we have the most powerful man on the planet is completely denying those things, and is not acting very rationally in general. And I think these are signs that there's deep anxiety in society, but it's somehow we don't want to look at the reasons why we have those deep anxieties, and climate change is a major part of that. I think people know deep down that we're facing.
We've crossed some thresholds.
We've crossed some threshold, and I think the paradox is that if we really face this, it might free us more than freeze us, because I think that's the worry of all these people saying you shouldn't talk about it because everyone will freeze. Anyway, at the moment, we're dead men walking.
Yeah.
People are sleepwalking. We're all sleepwalking, and in a way, perhaps saying, okay, we have nothing to lose, everything to gain by just think of everything differently. It might trigger a shift in the way we look at the world, inside people saying, I can't hang to the past. This is not going to be the same anymore. But I'm going to face, and I'm going to learn to fly. Basically, we're at that cliff. We're going to have to learn to fly somehow. Completely change the way we live on this planet and live together. But that doesn't mean we have to recreate a different place somewhere else. We do it wherever we are. I mean, starting very seriously to think about what is essential in our life, what is truly essential. And I don't think we are there yet. We're still hanging to petty things. And
we're a long way from it. And it was interesting, we were talking earlier about the protests in Paris that happened on the weekend past, and over more than one weekend I think now. They've been going on and on. And it really highlights some of the challenges that we face to try and deal with the changes that we're going to need to make. And we have President Macron raising the fuel tax or the fuel levy. He says because he wants to discourage the use of cars, and this is partly because of climate change. And of course the response has been from the people who are protesting is, President Macron's worried about the world, or worried about the future of the world. We're worried about what we're going to eat at the end of the month. And so, there's a great resistance to change, I think, and we always joke about Julien's French, so we can joke about this with him. We joke about the resistance of the French to change, but I don't think it's just the French. We're seeing it in societies all around the world. In fact, we're seeing it in societies where they're pursuing a carbon-based economy still, and emissions are still rising, despite what we know and what we've known for a long time, for generations, that we need to get these things down, these carbon emissions down. They're actually still rising. Deforestation is still rising, despite all the efforts of organisations like the Forest Trust, like companies with their no deforestation policies, like Greenpeace and others who are working on this, there seems to be this terrible momentum towards an unchanging journey over the edge of a cliff where we fall into the abyss. So it is a bit disturbing. I'm mindful we've come up to our 10 minutes. We probably need to finish it up now. This is just an initial video, a little chat to introduce this topic of INTHE. And I think we're going to talk about it a lot more because we both believe that the path to getting through it or coping with it as it comes our way is through discussion and compassionate discussion where we care for ourselves, we care for each other. As you were talking, I was mindful of that, you know, a lot of people are saying, oh, we've got to change our behaviour and we shouldn't be looking for technological fixes to this. Well, we might need a technological fix for this, and only by talking about it and chatting about it and opening our minds to what's possible could we find it. This could be the subject of our next video or something else. So thanks, mate, for joining us for that. Touching on this important subject, we hope that we can have some discussion with you all about this. And you know, if you've got any comments, any thoughts, do send them through. We'd like to have a dialogue about this. Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Thanks, mate. Thank you, Finn.